Previously, in Uncommon, Book 1 in the Chronicles of the Common series, Eva and Izzy finally escaped Vatas Rosana, stepping through the portal to the space station at Lana. And now, Chapter 9, Eva. Skin crawling as if a million tiny spiders were skittering across the surface, I exited the portal and instantly drew my blaster. "What is it? What's wrong?" Izzy whispered in a panic. She pushed me behind her and pulled her own blaster to stand guard. When my crazy clone companion had explained we were going to a space station, this was not exactly what I had been expecting. Before us stretched a dark forest of death. The twisted skeletons of trees were rooted in dirt and mud. The ground was littered with dead leaves, large black rocks, and dozens of bones which I refused to examine too closely. A sulfur-infused mist of ash hung in the air, falling to dust the forest in a macabre snowing of soot. The flickering of dying lights, dulled by the ashen fog, illuminated a gruesome illusion of withered branches reaching for prey. The decaying forest crackled and creaked with unseen life. "I'm trying to decide which is worse, zombie city or haunted hell," I whispered. "This looks like nuclear fallout. Are we safe here?" "Oh, absolutely not," she replied. "There's no radiation, if that's what you're implying, but we're definitely not safe here." "This doesn't look like a space station, Izzy. Are we in the right place?" "Yep. Welcome to Atlanta." Izzy turned to face me with a huge smile and gestured to the surrounding forest. "The Naraki basically redecorated with bits of their homeworld. It's Healy-ass chic." She giggled at her joke. "On the positive side, there's no lava." "Turn on your bracelet and let's move. I want out of here fast," I suggested and activated my shield bracelet. This place was giving me the creeps. The sooner we left, the better for my mental well-being. Izzy led us to a narrow dirt path, then stopped. She looked right, then she looked left. She tapped a finger against her lips, then nodding, she turned to the right and started down the path. Neither of us holstered our blasters. "Something you said in Zombie World got me to wondering. How old are you?" I asked. "A few million years. Honestly, I don't really know anymore. After a while, the centuries just start to blend." Millions of years stuck in that coldly rigid world. Millions of years watching other people live real lives. I barely managed a single day. It was a miracle the woman had survived. It's no wonder she was a little crazy. "How? I paused to step over the skeletal remains of a rather large animal. "How did you not completely lose your mind there?" "In the beginning, it was all I knew. It was exciting to witness so many different lives. I could be anything, do anything. Every day was a new experience, especially as the various species evolved. When that grew too familiar, I started to follow specific people and became invested in their lives. It was like watching a television series, only it lasted for centuries instead of seasons. Eventually, I began to see things differently, and the thought of another scribe session became torture. The day we went into hiding was the best day of my life. Until now, of course," she grinned. It was easy to understand becoming addicted to other people's lives. What human hadn't binge-watched a television series or found themselves unable to put down a good book? This past year, I had become quite familiar with the escapism of fiction, but life outside of the screen or page was always insistently waiting. While my reality had been difficult, I wouldn't wish Izzy's on my worst enemy. I was immensely impressed with the woman's stamina. "Is that why the Vatas don't like emotions? It's too hard to go that long and still feel feelings?" I asked. "Sort of," Izzy said. "When we scribe, we feel everything the host feels. It's hard enough to feel our own emotions. Add someone else's and repeat with millions of lives over millions of years. If the scribes kept all their emotions, Vatas Rosana would be the largest insane asylum in the universe." "I hadn't considered that. I just assumed it was to control the population," I said. "Oh, definitely. Zombie City, as you put it, was a byproduct the elders were more than happy to exploit. That's why I went full commando on the emotions. I wasn't about to go only halvesies in the trader department." I laughed at the little rebel clone's determination. As much as the last year of my life had often hurt, I wouldn't trade away the emotions for anything. Existing on logic and purpose alone was exactly as Izzy explained, a half-life. Emotions formed the building blocks of individuality, cooperation, and community. It was how people learned to value and care for each other. A full range of feelings gave life meaning. Emotions and logic worked hand in hand, acting as the checks and balances against the horrors of which humanity was capable. The common may not be filled with humans, but I firmly believed the concept still held. "Oh, look! It's a bishop bush! I've always wanted to see one." Izzy skipped over to a large brown bowl-shaped plant with long red vines sprouting from the center. "Don't touch the tendrils. They will pull you into its mouth. Then it will slowly digest you. I scribed a Naraki who was eaten by one. I don't recommend the experience." A rustle of leaves sounded to the right. Izzy spun, pushed me behind her, and fired her blaster wildly into the copse of trees. Several small bats took flight, escaping her attack. "Oops!" Izzy blushed at her panic. I patted her on the shoulder and tried not to laugh. "Good job guarding. You killed the evil tree." "Actually, I don't think I hit anything," she pouted. "Maybe I should try again." "Let's avoid making any more noise," I suggested, forcing down Izzy's hand holding the blaster. We returned to the path and continued to make our way out of the haunted terminal. As the hours passed, the soot slowly ceased falling. At some point, Izzy had assumed the role of tour guide, expounding on the various carnivorous flora and fauna. Occasionally she would pause at a partially eaten carcass and ponder the animal or plant that had made the kill. The flesh-eating plants and husks of dead trees grew denser the farther along the path we continued. So too did the population of mysterious tiny red eyes peeking from behind leaves and branches watching our procession. My nerves were starting to fray, and no matter how perky and enthusiastic it may be, Izzy's tour of terrors was not helping matters. "What about the Hada?" I attempted to change the subject. "No, silly, the Hada don't have venomous quills. Some have poisonous saliva. Oh, and some have an acidic touch. But no quills." She skipped to another skeleton and picked up the small dried skull. "Hey, these are haddock bones. They make an excellent cure for tota sickness." She removed her bag and proceeded to stuff the bones inside. "I meant, how did you come to follow the Hada? Why choose the hybrids?" I asked. "Oh." Izzy sealed her bag and began walking again. "I don't want to talk about it." This woman could talk about everything and nothing in textbook detail. My interest was piqued. "Why not? They obviously mean something to you or you wouldn't have picked their clone form." "Do you want to talk about Matt?" Izzy countered. This was about a guy? Now I had to know. "You know everything about me. I think it's only fair," I accused. Izzy was silent for several strides, then gave a long sigh. "Fine, but you have to promise not to tease me." "Agreed," I quickly said. I was kind of a big deal in Vatas Razana. As one of their best scribes, I had privileges others didn't. Some species would come to the scribes seeking wisdom and private counsel. For a while, that was my role. A young Raka vampire came to see me, and through the years we built a friendship. These were the years I first began to grow discontent with my life. We would play Korat, it's like chess, and talk for hours. He would bring me trinkets and treasures from his travels around the common. I needed to know more about him, so I started to scribe him, which was expressly forbidden. I soon found out why they didn't like us to scribe those we counsel. I'd grown attached. "Attached? Did you like him, as a woman likes a man?" I asked. The Vatas bodies aren't able to produce the chemicals that create those types of connections. At least that's what we believe. However, it was very close to that feeling. I don't know if he ever knew how I felt. She made a small shrug and flapped her hand nervously. Anyway, many years after his mother died, his Raka father had a second child with a Kedi woman, making his sister a Hada hybrid. Everyone loved her. She was a very good person, but a little naive and privileged. She was opening an orphanage for Hada children when a hired mercenary bombed the event. She was killed instantly. A few years later, he and his family took up their sister's cause and began establishing refugee camps for the Hada across the sector. Why would someone want to bomb an orphanage? Prejudice. His maternal grandmother hired the mercenaries to kill his sister. The girl wasn't even in the old hag's bloodline, but she couldn't stand to have her family so closely related to a Hada. I thought my family was screwed up, I mumbled. Sure, there were times when I wished for the death of my violently alcoholic father, or even my misogynistic stepfather. But assassins? I couldn't imagine the type of hatred and dysfunction that would cause a family to hire professionals. Your family was screwed up, except your mom. She was lovely. Izzy gave me a small smile. So, my precocious little rebel clone had fallen for a hero of the underdogs. I couldn't help but smile. Will had explained that the Vatas rebellion had been inspired by the Hada movement, and I suspected Izzy was the one who had been instrumental in founding their rebellion. Her hybrid form was an obvious commitment to follow in her hero's footsteps, despite the inevitable adversities she would encounter for resembling a Hada. Her choice of a female form spoke to her feelings for the mysterious young man, a man she had likened to Matt, which did not bode well for her story's outcome. So, how did he betray you? I tentatively asked. Izzy watched her feet shuffle over the dirt path. I don't know if it was intentionally directed at me, but he had a matri cast a spell on him to block Vatas from scribing him. They were taking the Hada to a new homeworld, and I believe he was trying to keep the location secret. When they arrived at the planet, they were met with an overpowering mercenary force. It was a massacre. He died in the battle. I'm sorry. Don't be. He could have warned me or at least said goodbye. He didn't think of how it might affect me when he disappeared. The fact is, he didn't think of me at all. He had become the world to me, and I meant nothing to him. I'm so mad at him I could spit. She stopped dead in her tracks and looked at me with mischievous eyes and a wide grin. Hey, I've never spit before. She proceeded to wiggle her jaw, then launched a wide spray of saliva in every direction. I sidestepped the shower and laughed at her misfire. Collect it in the front of your mouth, then purse your lips a bit more. Watch. I launched a large globule to land a few feet away. Still wiping the moisture from her mouth, Izzy jumped in excitement. Okay. She followed my guidance and spat a small glob onto the ground. Excellent, but very unladylike. At this point, I wasn't sure which of us was the worst influence. That was so much fun. I've decided being a lady is not on my list of things to do. A strong spitting warrior is far more fun than being a helpless pretty princess, Izzy said, then launched another wad of saliva onto the ground. I couldn't agree more. I was definitely growing fond of my new little friend. We busied our walk by declaring all of the things we wished to do with our new lives. Izzy had a distinct advantage with her extensive knowledge of the common, but the game was a welcome distraction from our ominous surroundings. It also provided a helpful lesson in both education on my new home and understanding the insanity of my new friend. Wait, you want to jump off a cliff to dive through 7 rings of fire, hoping to land in a tiny well of water? No, Izzy, just no. Do people really do that? I asked in disbelief. They do. It's an angel ritual to test wing agility in a dive. The fire rings are set at different heights and distances across the face of the cliff. I scribed an Agne who witnessed one. The diver didn't make the well. He was pretty crispy by the time he hit the ground, Izzy giggled. Oh my God, you are so sick and twisted. I might just respect you for that, I chuckled. A loud howl echoed through the terminal and the forest instantly descended into silence. Clued, Izzy whispered. This would be far more exciting if I were scribing. Clued, you said that was a hellhound, right? There was a hellhound coming this way? The mere thought had me looking for escape routes and places to hide. Yes, do not run, the crazy woman suggested. Try to stay calm and just keep walking. They're drawn to the chase. Stay calm? She had to be joking. Every instinct I possessed screamed to run. A trampling of bushes to the right grew louder with every step, and another howl ripped through the silence. It was close, and getting closer. A group of bats burst from the trees to seek refuge in the rafters. The withered foliage violently shook, then a small bat darted from between the leaves. Its tiny black wings frantically beat to keep the creature aloft as it dipped and rose in flight. Catching sight of us, it quickly adjusted course, heading straight in our direction. "Hey, you're cute," Izzy began her compliment, only to be interrupted by the tiny bat slamming into her face. Distracted by the amusing collision, I nearly missed the large black beast leaping from the bushes. I raised my blaster just as the hound completed his jump to land directly over Izzy's prone form. A pained scream ripped from the woman, and I stayed my shot, afraid of hitting her by mistake. Without a single thought as to the wisdom of my action, I grabbed the massive animal by the neck, which wasn't a difficult reach considering the creature's head was level with my breast. I tugged and dragged the animal off Izzy, finally managing to corral him away from the clone's injured body. He twisted and snapped his jaws in my direction, but I managed to sidestep the bite, then gave the hound a final shove, pushing him a few feet away. I stood protectively in front of Izzy's body and pointed the blaster at the giant hound. "Bad doggy," I stupidly shouted with as much authority as I could muster. "Very bad doggy," I scolded, waving the blaster to punctuate my words. I have no idea why I felt the need to play the biggest, baddest alpha to the animal, but it was all I could come up with at short notice. "Holy crap, please don't kill me." The hound tilted its head to the side and narrowed its red eyes. The creature began to prowl a wide circle around us. Its large head was tipped with a narrow snout and curved fangs protruding from the sides of its mouth. Tall and slightly twisted ears twitched atop its head. His face was covered in black fur, which gradually formed into spikes of matted pelt around his neck, and then faded into dark scales across the remainder of his body. The scales and spikes rose and fell from his skin with each strong breath. Extending from the base of his spine was a long, flat tail lined with thousands of red-tipped quills. Following the sound of Izzy's shaking breath, I slowly took a few steps closer to the injured woman. Keeping my blaster trained on the clued, I risked a quick glance at Izzy. Shit! She was lying on her back with the tiny bat cradled to her chest. Between her collarbone and shoulder was a large hole seeping a steady stream of blood. The hound took a step forward, and I whipped my head back to the animal. "No, stay," I ordered. The creature paused. "Interesting. Let's see how far I can take this." "You've been a very bad doggy. Now stay where you are and sit." The dog extended his nose and sniffed. A deep growl vibrated in its chest. "No," I scolded. "Sit down now." The black hound cocked his head and slowly lowered his haunches. Oh my God. It looked like my alpha ruse was actually working. "Good doggy," I purred in approval. "Can you lie down?" He raised a paw and began to clean Izzy's blood from a large talon on the back of his lower leg. "Fair enough," I shrugged. "That was probably pushing it." I slipped the bag and cloak from my back and knelt down next to my injured companion. After opening the bag, I riffled through the contents with my free hand until I found the tin Izzy had indicated was a first aid kit. I flipped the lid open and used the kit's meager supply of gauze to put pressure on her wound. Izzy cried out in pain. "Is there anything in here that can heal you?" I asked. "No, forgot, flesh, fix," Izzy wheezed through labored breaths. This was not happening. I needed to heal Izzy. We may not have been friends for long, but I'd grown attached to the little clone, damn it. I could not lose my only friend in this insane universe. My heart was pounding a million beats a minute, and sweat began to pour down my face. This was bad. Very, very bad. The crazy damned clone had been planning her escape for centuries, and she couldn't remember to pack whatever she said would fix her? She could not die after being out of her zombie civilization for only one day. I took a deep breath and forced my nerves to calm. Watching the Clude's reaction, I slowly lowered my weapon to rest on Izzy's stomach and let go. The animal dropped his paw and lowered himself to the ground. I nodded to the animal in gratitude. Izzy's face was twisted in torment, and she clutched the tiny bat like a lifeline. I noticed her shield bracelet was empty and assumed it had been drained before the hound attacked. I returned to sifting through the contents of the medical kit. Tape, ointment, some type of injector, a scalpel. What I couldn't find was a needle or thread. I had a needle and thread in my emergency kit, which was currently stuck behind a rock wall in the back of my SUV. Shit, this is not happening. Blood filled the gauze covering Izzy's wound and began to seep between my fingers. Yep, this is definitely very, very bad. I bit my lip to keep it from quivering, the pain distracting me from the urgent need to cry out for help, or just plain cry. Come on, think, Eva. I helplessly watched Izzy's pained face. There must be a way to heal you. How do I heal you? I racked my brain for a solution. The hound's head perked up, and I quickly reached for my weapon, then paused. A white glow emanated from my hand pressed to Izzy's wound. The glow wasn't warm or cold, nor did it hurt. In fact, I felt nothing from my hand at all, not even the hand itself. What the hell? Izzy gasped and dropped her chin to watch my supernova appendage. She squinted against the bright light but didn't make any move to push me away. The glow gradually disappeared, and I once again felt the warm moisture of Izzy's blood. I cautiously raised my palm and peeled back the gauze. The gaping puncture beneath Izzy's torn clothes was now replaced by smooth, unblemished skin. I stared at my bloody hand in shock. What just happened? I whispered. You healed me. You really are a matrihata, Izzy said. Her wide eyes never left my bloody hand. Healing must be your magic. I'm so jealous right now. Holy crap. Will was right. I'm not human. Did I really just heal you? I asked in a whisper. Sure did. I'm so proud of you I could cry. Her statement was confirmed by her own wobbling lip and misty eyes. I would give you a gold comet right now if I could. Huh? I asked in confusion, then recognized her mistake. Oh, gold star. Teachers give out gold stars, not comets. Whatever. Izzy shrugged her freshly healed shoulder. Her moment of apparent sentiment was abruptly over as she turned her attention to the bat between her fingers. Distracted by shock, I paid little attention to the hound creeping forward. I absently wiped the back of my hand across my sweating brow, covering my face in blood. The hound quickly stretched his neck and whipped out his tongue, lapping the blood from my forehead. Ew, gross! I pushed him away. The animal's fetid breath had me heaving and gagging for fresh air. Izzy giggled, drawing the hound's attention to her with a fierce growl. She gasped in a breath and froze. You will not hurt Izzy or her little bat thing. Bad doggy, I yelled. The hound returned his attention to me and obediently sat. Good boy. I patted his head and rubbed his ears as a reward. How are you doing that? And how can you touch him? Izzy asked. No one can touch a Clude. No one. Their fur burns flesh. It's a miracle I only had a talon wound. Half my body should be barbecued right now. It's probably best we don't ask too many questions. I'm nervous this is all an act and he's going to pounce at any moment, I said. And you did not mention burning fur when you described the hellhound. Oops, she said with an unrepentant smile. I helped Izzy to her feet. Unable to control my relief, I drew my little friend into a tight hug. I'm so glad you're okay, I whispered. Aw, Eva, you like me. Izzy issued a muffled sniffle into my shoulder. Thank you for healing me, but you're squishing my bat. I chuckled and released her. Izzy began to quietly whisper to the little bat in her hands. She nodded and cooed, then kissed its tiny forehead. What exactly are you doing? I asked the crazy clone. She placed the bat on her shoulder, and the tiny creature crawled into the curve of her neck, nesting in her hair. "She's my familiar." Izzy puffed out her chest and beamed over her new acquisition. "Her mother was killed by a Naraki. She wants to come with us, and I agreed. Her name is Mino." But... I sputtered, unable to formulate a response. I had no idea how the woman knew what she did about the little animal. Maybe the traumatic experience had forged a bond between the two? Or maybe she was actually insane. Could we really take a bat with us? Then again, why shouldn't the woman have her own pet? After living millions of years, she had definitely earned it. "Whatever," I finally agreed with a shrug. I bent down to retrieve my bag and the bloody gauze, but stilled when the hound rose to his feet and gave a long, menacing growl. His hackles rose and he prowled in my direction. Panic froze me in place until I realized that his attention wasn't on me. No, the hound was clearly focused on something behind me. Subscribe to continue listening and discover what new threat stalks Eva and Izzy in the hellscape terminal of Atlanta. If you liked what you heard, the Uncommon ebook can be purchased at all major retailers for only 99 cents. Thank you for listening.